Carrie Lucas with the Independent Women's Forum, IWF.org, on the line with us. Hey, Carrie, how you doing today? Carrie?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks again for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you for showing up. You have been blogging about healthcare and writing about it and the healthcare thing. I'd like to just share with you a faux news release that was posted by Xneocon, K-N-E, but it's spelled funny. But anyway, over at the Daily Kos that I thought was great, and I'd just like to use this as a framing device for our conversation, if you don't mind. It's about 10 sentences. Here we go. Republican lawmakers are strongly coming out in opposition to providing Americans with a universal fire protection bill so that every American can have their fires put out. This bill, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said, would put a bureaucrat between you and your firemen. We need to ensure that the government does not ration fire services and that the principles of the free market are not destroyed. The CBO estimates the president's plan would cost $1.6 trillion. This estimate does not take into account the value of the property that would be saved from destruction by fire. Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, in a recent appearance on Fox News, said, "Some people are just going to have their houses burned down. It sucks to them, but this will cost too much. We need the money to fight terrorists." A group of GOP congressional members have proposed an alternative plan emphasizing heavy distribution of garden hoses and super soakers. When asked about the fact that they already receive federal government fire protection as members of Congress, one GOP leader who declined to be identified said, "That's different. We're important members of society. Every important and wealthy person should be covered because their houses are worth more." Democrats argued that providing residences and businesses with fire protection would free them up to hire more workers with the money they would otherwise have to spend paying for fire protection. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said every American should have the right to big trucks and hoses when something they own is burning. Despite the fact that 72% of those polled said they would like the option of having a government truck put out their fire, the GOP and several dissenting Democrats say that government trucks are too big and slow to put out a fire well. And Senator Kent Conrad, Democrat from North Carolina, said the government couldn't possibly put out fires as well as private companies could. But if it let them try, all those companies would go out of business because the government would cheat by putting firehouses everywhere. Companies can't afford to do that and make a profit at the same time. We feel that's un-American. So why should we all agree that we want the government to be putting out our fires in our homes, but not a fire on our bodies?
Well, you know, Tom, I think this is a kind of a silly comparison, and I think there's a lot of people out there who are necessarily recognize that this isn't healthcare is not the same as putting out fires. There's a whole lot of
no, it's more important.
Sorry, it's just as important, but there's a lot more nuance involved in it, and there's a lot more at stake in terms of, you know, I'm sure there is innovation that goes on in terms of the technology of how we best put out fires, but really what we're talking about in healthcare is not just preventative services or the kinds of fire hoses that we need. We also need a lot of real innovation and money sunk into developing new technologies, and there is the profit motive does make a difference in healthcare.
But Carrie, there right now in the United States, all over the country, you can find these, what do they call them? These compact fluorescent bulbs. And new technologies are being developed for LCD displays and things like that. As a consequence of government mandates that are given to power companies that they have to support these, or state support, state subsidies for the sale of these things, this has been brought about. I mean, better gas mileage has been brought about by government mandates. This is not going to kill innovation anymore, and the whole competition thing, I just don't get it. The post office is doing a fine job at delivering the mail, but they haven't put FedEx or UPS out of business. Why can't we have a post office for all of us who want just basic health care? We want our stamp delivered, our letter delivered across the United States for a 44-cent stamp. Cheap, easy, quick, efficient. But if somebody wants it there at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, no excuses, regardless of the size or the cost, let them buy the FedEx of health insurance.
You know, Tom, first time, I'm having a little trouble hearing you sometimes, so forgive me if I cut in at the wrong time. I hope you can hear me all right. But, first of all, it's funny to bring up the post office, because my understanding, I haven't looked at the post office's finances in a long time, but I know that they were very close to spiraling out of control and having some real budget problems there in the post office. So that's I think a pretty dangerous comparison for someone, a supporter of federal government involvement.
Well, they raised the cost of stamps up to 44 cents, and all is well again.
And no, all well again, as people know, the post office, the cost of stamps keeps going up in part because it really isn't affordable what the post office has promised to do, and they're retracting services. New homes throughout much of the country no longer do get mail delivered to their door. Now you have to drive to the end of a big cul-de-sac. So there is rationing when it comes to the post office. So that's actually, I think, a pretty good example. And you know, we don't need to just look at things like the post office, because we do have systems overseas that do have single-payer systems, which is where we would be headed under a public option. And we know that, yes, there are absolutely benefits to it, and I think that we shouldn't be afraid to admit that sure, that there will be some benefits with going to all government control on health care, but there also are real costs, and I wish that you guys out there would be a little bit more open about that, where most innovation does come from the United States. We are the place that comes up with most new treatments and most new drugs, and that's why so many people continue that we're the #1 destination for medical tourism, and we will be giving up a lot of that if we do start to try to squeeze the profits out of healthcare. Well, and that's very explicitly what people are in favor of, or what President Obama is talking about, getting the profits out. Well, there's a cost to getting the profits out.
Well, why is it then that the companies, and I'm sorry I don't have the list in front of me, but it's easily available and easily Googled, the companies that are the world's largest manufacturers of imaging machines, CAT scan machines, the PET scanners and things like this. I mean, the super fancy stuff. Most of it's coming out of Germany right now. Most of the drugs, the real innovations, not just changing a molecule so you can repatent the drug. Most of that's coming out of Switzerland now. The Swiss drug companies, are the Bayer is German. What is it? Novartis is Swiss. I forget the names of them. I don't have the list. But the innovation that is done in America is mostly done, like you said, to generate profit. That is, to maintain patents. The real new drugs are either done by National Institutes of Health funded research, or they're to be done in other countries.
Well, I know that there's research being done around the world, but we remain the leader in medical innovation. And when it comes to, it's funny because I know that you've pointed out to your audience that I'm living now in Vienna, Austria, socialized medicine.
Right.
So I have socialized medicine at my disposal.
I try not to rub it in your face too much.
Yeah, I don't really participate in it since we're still we've got a United States government system that operates over here. But
so you're using U.S. socialized medicine?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we do have a government kind of a government healthcare program that's just around the corner, and they do a very nice job for us, this small community. But one of the things that's been interesting is while a lot of people end up going to the hospital here is my husband's in the Foreign Service, and some fellow diplomats end up going to the United States when they had a guy just had to have a heart operation. He wasn't going to do it here. He wasn't going to do it in his home country. He was going to come to the United States, and that's something that yes, there may be benefits to having, if you believe, which I don't, if you believe that there is going to be, everyone being covered under Obama's plan, which, there will be benefits to that, but there will also be great costs, and that will be driving some of the best surgeons, the best people out of this business, because it won't be the same valued, there won't be the great rewards there for folks. So there is a cost to moving away.
There's a cost to doing nothing, though, too, isn't there? I mean, we've got.
Sorry?
There's a cost to doing nothing. We have tens of thousands of people in the United States who die every year because they don't have access to health care.
Absolutely, and I think that there should be some real. I would hope that when you were in part of your intro, when you were talking about this idea of this healthcare system that exists only for the rich. And that's absolutely true, and I think it should be appalling to everyone that right now that really the only way you can get affordable insurance is through a company, and through a company that can afford it. But that's part of the problem with the tax laws, and I think that everybody should say, why is it that you have this great tax benefit for getting insurance if your employer buys it for you, but for the guy who's starting to start their small business, they don't get that?
Yeah, no, Carrie, I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I think it's insane that we have an employer-based healthcare system in the United States, and that it's either tax deductible to corporations or not to individuals. And we'll have to leave it at that. Carrie Lucas on a point of agreement. IWF.org. Thanks, Carrie.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, Tom.
Great talking with you. Coming up next, Berlusconi and another topless model. Oh no.